From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Today, K-State's Dan O Brien will talk about the wide variations in row crop basis levels at Kansas delivery points as our fall harvest plods along toward conclusion as part of Dan's weekly commentary on the grain market trends. Also, K-State's Wendy Johnson and Ignacio Ciampitti will talk about a new online tool for you Kansas corn growers on the MyFields.info website, featuring the very latest K-State corn hybrid performance information as the field trial results are now coming in. Further ahead, Kansas FFA state reporter Miranda Depenbusch will check in from the National FFA Convention. And on Kansas agricultural weather, K-State's Mary Knapp. All that right here on Agriculture Today.
Hamburgers, roast, ribs, steak, or whatever you prefer. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Kansas cattle farmers produce 7.5 million head of cattle per year. It takes about 7 tablespoons of peanut butter to get the same amount of protein in 1 serving of lean beef. Support your local Kansas farmers and ranchers. Eat beef. This message was brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
This is the K-State Radio Network, and you're tuned to Agriculture Today. Glad to have you listening in once more. In the grain markets this week, well, in many respects, a forgettable week because of the downturn in the trades for the most part. We'll look at all of it and find out what Dan O Brien thinks about what's going on in the markets. He is a grain market economist, K-State Research and Extension. One thing for sure, Dan, considering what we've seen the past couple of days or so, harvest delays are not at all in play here, it doesn't seem.
Right, and I think that given we're towards the end of October, we're not dealing with short crops, we aren't seeing panicky buying on the part of foreign buyers or domestic with these large crops coming on. I think we're in a situation in the grain markets that is not unexpected. Again, we're not seeing that large rains are coming and are delaying grain harvest, at least in the most key central 3I state region. It is sure interesting when you look at the weather maps and where moisture's at. There are some areas where we are wetter than otherwise, but in the heart of the Corn Belt, again, we're making progress. If we're cutting out the primary areas, then I think the market, in a general consensus opinion, thinks that, well, the rest of it will come. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't take long to look around and on ag market news, discussion groups, social media, USDA, et cetera, and there's been some damage from excessive moisture, particularly to soybeans. So that's, we have issues like that, but still, overall, the market doesn't see a widespread enough impact on harvest progress that it's lending much support for prices. And I think you can really see the general tenor of this as we're heading off to the last parts of harvest. Again, you've seen December corn futures fall from, about 378 to down yesterday at about 361. They had gotten down before at about 343. So that's sort of our range of what we're looking at. The long-term lows, here we're sitting at 361. Let's say these harvest lows persist for a while. Where we've been in the past has been down to either, say, 301, as we were back in 2016 for the low, about 328 in 2017, even earlier this year, down to about 328.5 as a low. So we're sitting at 361 right now, a little bit above that, and in the latter part of harvest. The soybean market, when you look at where it's been, late August, particularly early September, it got down to about 810 or so. Closed yesterday about 841, so about 30 cents or so. And really, with all the pessimism, lack of movement in exports, et cetera, at least from China's point of view, and that ongoing trade dispute issue, to hold up where we're at is, I wouldn't say it's surprisingly good, but gosh, you could foresee that there would be scenarios where we'd go even lower. Mm-hmm. The long-term low, well, I guess what does kind of strike me, the low that we've had in soybean futures since going back to at least 2010, was about 831, and we have actually seen that in the last 1 or 2 months. So here we're down at 842 and kind of floundering around in that 830, 840, 850 area, and just indicative of the huge carryovers and export problems we have in soybeans. Even wheat has fallen off to the low side. Long-term low for wheat, long-term low for the December 2018 hard red winter wheat contract was about 480. Closed yesterday in that contract at about 486. That 480 happened November of last year. The longer-term low for wheat futures actually was, we're over $1 above that. Back in 2016, we got down to 367 and 486 now. So still that some general positive things that have happened in the wheat market in the last year or so are keeping us away from the long-term pessimistic bottoms. But here in the last couple weeks, you see really the same pattern in all of these major futures complexes that we're watching, and they've all fallen off appreciably. And again, it makes you wonder about not just harvest pressures, but really perhaps even the broader set of worries in the overall U.S. economy are perhaps leading over to the ag commodities and affecting these futures contracts as well.
Wanted to ask about that very thing. How much of an influence is this current rough patch in the stock market, where that market earlier this week had actually given up all the gains that had been posted for this calendar year?
Well, investors have money to put somewhere, and they pull money out of one location, they start looking elsewhere, and in general, I think from an ag commodity point of view, we're sort of a taker from the broader U.S. economy and in financial markets, and it affects us. Like the thing we can look to as having the most solid effect would be what happens with the U.S. dollar, because it affects our exports so directly, and it is interesting to see how in the last week or so the U.S. dollar has moved to the higher side. The U.S. economy, Dow Jones Industrial Index, as a projector of the U.S. economy, has moved to the lower side. Oil futures have moved from what had been about, several weeks ago, about $76, $77 down to $60. In essence, lost $10 over the last about 3 or 4 weeks. Gasoline had been $2.15 about several weeks ago, and now down to $1.82. And that's affecting the profitability of ethanol plants. Earlier this week, we calculated where ethanol plants in Iowa, right in the heartland of the U.S., how their profitability prospects were looking in October. And it came to find out that in September, those plants had lost, on average, as you look at a good model of how they function, about 8 cents a gallon. Here in October, they're losing about 13 cents a gallon. So, we're looking at ag commodity markets. We look at corn and grain sorghum as it goes into those plants, and if those plants are losing money, that's a negative for corn market outlook, negative for grain sorghum market outlook as well. And add to that just so export purchases, then, gosh, by the time you diminish the outlook for ethanol usage for corn, for export usage for corn, it's not surprising to see that, the corn market's down over the last 1 or 2 weeks about 20-25 cents. In fact, that many, quote, negative headwinds, borrowing terms from the financial market analysts. With that set of headwinds that you're against, you would wonder that we wouldn't be down even more.
Right. Well, Dan, you've observations in this visit about our basis trends as we find them for corn and soybeans around Kansas, and we might conclude with that corn basis is all over the map, and soybean basis is hurting rather badly in spots, you say.
Corn basis levels in the western third of the state at a couple locations, Colby, Garden City, actually holding steady, not declining, even in the midst of harvest. Again, corn in those areas, there are some ethanol plants out there, but a lot of that's going to livestock feeders. Getting into the central part of the state, though, looking at Salina, Hutchinson, corn basis has widened out 30, 40 cents over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. So definitely representing a weakening trend. Topeka area, representative location there, had weakened also, strengthened just a little bit in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but a lot of weakening from a positive basis and end of summer down to about 40 under, and then now back to 30. Surprisingly, well, I guess not surprisingly, Columbus, southeast corner of the state, has pretty strong basis levels, really. It had been positive at 1 or 2 short periods of falling weaker than that, but probably the strongest basis trends in the state that have sustained over the last 1 or 2 months have come down in southeast Kansas. So good for them. No doubt that grain's heading off down into the southeast poultry feed area, or some good portion of it. Soybean basis bids, again, weak really all over the state. Topeka, you see quite a drop-off from, well, earlier midsummer, about 35, 37 cents under, now down to about 85, 90 cents under. And you've got, in central part of the state, basis bids falling sharply below $1 under. We have had $1 under to $1.50 under basis bids in a lot of western Kansas locations, but they don't seem to be dropping off quite as badly or sharply as in some of the central Kansas locations. Again, down in southeast, they've dropped off as well, but again, not quite as badly as really in some other areas of the state on a relative basis. So I guess, Eric, it's harvest time. And we have large crops coming on. There are a few mitigating factors, and it just, in a way, you kind of look forward to us getting through the harvest time frame, whatever's going to be sold, and then no doubt there'll be a lot of storage, and then the market will have to deal with the price it has to pay to entice grain out of storage. And at that time, then we'd start to see some turnaround in some of the cash and futures prices, I would think.
Producers are eager for better pricing prospects ahead. Let's hope that materializes. Dan, as always, thanks for your comments. We'll touch base next Friday once more.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.
That from K-State Research and Extension grain market economist Dan O Brien. He's along with us every Friday right here. Remember, check out his full-blown notes on the grain trades, updated weekly. Those at agmanager.info, agmanager.info. Agriculture Today returns after this over the K-State Radio Network.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Agriculture Today returns now on the K-State Radio Network. We have a word for you corn producers now about an informational resource that you probably haven't tapped into yet because it's brand new. It's featured on the MyFields webpage that K-State maintains, and we'll talk about that once again. And ask Ignacio Ciampitti to let us know what prompted this project, and then bring in the individual who's managing it, Entomologist Wendy Johnson, K-State Research and Extension. Ignacio, as you know, is a crop production and cropping systems specialist at K-State. The idea here was to, in relatively rapid time here, Ignacio, get information from the K-State research trials out there on corn hybrid performance, correct?
Yes. The main goal was, if you look at all the corn hybrid performance information that each year K-State collects and also maintains, based on all the research locations that we have across the state, one of the challenges that we were facing is that this data was coming late to those farmers, and I think that the farmer mentality and the decision-making process changed in the last decade. So today farmers are really prompt and rapid to take those decisions. So as soon as they finish harvesting.
Immediately upon finishing.
I will say immediately upon. You have a seed dealer visiting with you while you're harvesting. Those farmers need to take the decision for the next coming year. And in fact, seed industry today is even motivating them with cutting price on seeds and giving some incentives so they can make that decision soon. And one of the issues is we are producing excellent quality information, replicated trials, different hybrid performance, looking at hybrid and several locations, in some places dryland irrigated information, but many times that data was coming late to our farmers. So we, with Dr. Johnson and Dr. Brian McCornack from Entomology, they were developing the website and the MyFields, and then we start discussing some opportunities to collaborate on thinking how we can get all this information as fast as possible. And specifically looking at the problem of how can we prepare and develop a tool that those farmers can just open a computer, a tablet, and immediately start comparing things. Because the challenge is on corn, as you know, these hybrids, they will usually last, between 3 to 5 years. So the seed industry is really changing those hybrids quite quickly, no more than 3 to 5 years. But we have, in many situations, these same hybrids replicated in different sites and in different years. So, and then for one farmer, going to a tool and trying to take a look to the information for his location, not only for that specific year that might be biased for the specific weather conditions of that year, but looking at maybe the same hybrid in that location for the last 2 or 3 years, and trying to do that type of comparison quickly.
Identify a trend over time.
Exactly. That was, not possible in the past, because by looking at all the publications or by going online, and I have seen several farmers approaching me in the past that they try to do that, and I see these guys making the effort of collecting the Excel files and trying to put in a different format, or even guys coming with the printing publications from the several years and trying to highlight the hybrids and saying, oh, this year is doing the same or not. So we thought about the idea we should come up with something that is fast, fresh, dynamic, and will present the data to the farmers in a way that they can easily visualize it at any time. And it needs to be really fast, because that was one of the challenges. As soon as the data is coming to us, we need to get that data uploaded and displayed, because those guys are taking decisions today. So we thought about this environment and this complexity, and we decided, I think that it's time to prepare a tool that could use, start populating, at the beginning populating only using information from replicated trials, but we are envisioning in the future, on this tool, to start populating with any specific data that could be demonstration plots, because many times you discuss with one agricultural agent, and then you start discussing about demonstration plots, and you say, do you have the numbers from last year? And yes, I have it. Can you send it to me? But that data is not really immediately available for everyone. Mm-hmm. Even the on-farm research, with all the efforts that we are currently investing in on-farm research. So I think that this will be a tool where it's kind of a one-stop farm. The farmers will get into this hybrid tool, and they will be able basically to look at any specific corn yield data, across the state of Kansas.
Well, that is the inspiration behind the creation of this tool. We'll bring Wendy in now to explain specifically how it works in this user-friendly fashion. So Wendy, Ignacio explained where the data is coming from here, but how is it arranged so that producers can maximize the utility of this information?
Yes, and thank you for having me, Eric.
Sure.
I want to point out that in doing the corn data, making it available online in this way, there's a couple of advantages. One of them is that we're expanding our reach. So all you need is Wi-Fi signal in order to look up the website. Again, the website is MyFields.info.
Need to remember that, yes.
Yeah, MyFields.info. And anybody can visit the site. So if I'm visiting here, I'm looking at the home screen. I see a button that says Demonstration Plot Tool. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to bring up a map. On this map, we have the demonstration plot sites across the state that K-State coordinates. And if you are looking at the map and you're in western Kansas or you're in eastern Kansas, you can pick the data set that's closest and most relevant to you. So that's another advantage to doing arranging the data in this way online. So if I'm clicking on a data set that's close to me, it's going to pull up all of the demonstration plots within that county, if there are multiple plots within a county, and it's going to give me a table format of the yield performance data. So I'm going to see yield, I'm going to see what the hybrid name is, the seed company, as well as some information about the cropping system, so if it's dry land or irrigated plots. Another nice feature about doing this online at MyFields is that we can sort of play with the data before you even get to see it. So when you pull up the table for the first time, you automatically get to see the top 3 yielding varieties within a plot. They float to the top, and they're in a different color on the table so that it's really nice, easy to see. And at the very top, we also have a county average. So that was the plot average for that particular trial, also floats to the top. So if I'm a corn producer and I'm looking or thinking about growing a different hybrid, I can go right to the top there and see what the average was and then compare my historical yield saying, well, am I right in line or am I way below that and I need to think about a different hybrid? Recently, what we did was kind of take this a step further. So now it's not just this table that you can explore, but if there's a hybrid on here that looks like one that would be well-suited and high-yielding in your area, there's a feature called Chart. So if I were to click on the Chart button, which is just within the rows of the table there, it's going to bring up this particular hybrid across all locations where it was tested in Kansas. And it's also going to separate the data out by dry land versus irrigated. So if we had both of those cropping system data available, it'll give you a side-by-side comparison. Again, for every county for which it was tested within a given year. So it's a nice way for me not only to see, this hybrid did well in my area, but how did it do across the state? If the data is available, I'll get to see that comparison.
So it really covers all contingencies, it seems, Wendy, or you've tried to attempt as much as you can in that respect.
Yeah, we're trying to make it a bit more dynamic than it has been available to our growers in the past. And the next step here is more data comes in future years is to show you that year-by-year comparison. So not only would you see what happened in the trial plots this year, but what's going on across many years to see how a hybrid's doing in different environmental conditions.
And it's all right there handy at the MyFields.info site. They'll see a link to this tool readily, right?
Right. Again, if you go to MyFields.info, you will see a home screen that has several buttons on it to get to different tools. This tool is the Demonstration Plot Tool.
And this is only but one feature of what one will find on myfields.info. We've not visited about the website in a while, so you might refresh us on some of the other facets and useful tools available likewise.
Sure. So again, anybody visiting the site has access to resources and tools that are available through K-State Extension. So one of those tools on the homepage there says Find Resources. This includes publications that you can filter by crop type. Next to that, we have a feature called Diagnostic Guides. This is, again, meant to help filter down crop pests that are specific to the crops that you're interested in growing. So when I click on the Diagnostic Guides button, it's going to ask me what pest type I'm interested in, so weeds versus insects versus disease. When I make a choice there, it's going to ask me which crop type I'm working with, and then it's just going to narrow it down to this list of common pests that are important to that crop every year in Kansas.
Well, it really has evolved into an excellent resource for crop producers, and it's as simple as going to myfields.info and checking out everything that's there, including this corn hybrid performance information that continues to be updated on the go here as we finish up this 2018 harvest and move swiftly into hybrid selection for 2019. Wendy, many thanks for a look at this. We hope folks will take full advantage of it.
Well, thank you very much, and we have lots more to come on the MyField site, so keep with us.
Keep us posted, if you would. And once again, Ignacio, thank you.
Thanks, Eric, as always, for the invitation.
Wendy Johnson with us. She is an entomologist, K-State Research and Extension, along with Ignacio Ciampitti, crop production, cropping system specialist here at K-State. You're listening to Agriculture Today. We'll have more in a moment on the K-State Radio Network.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State Research and Extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
This is the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Once more, the latest from the National FFA Convention, the 91st version of that event, now in its third day in Indianapolis, Indiana. We've asked the Kansas FFA state reporter, Miranda Depenbusch, to once again fill us in on what's happened yesterday, day 2 of the convention, and what's ahead for day 3 today. It was a busy one yesterday, you say, Miranda, and what policy developments were at hand on the convention floor yesterday?
Yes, Eric. So yesterday, after our first session, we had an all-delegates session on the floor, and a lot of what we discussed was raising dues for FFA and raising dues for the affiliation. That discussion went on for a very long time, and finally we decided to fail that motion about 11:30 last night. So there was a lot of discussion and a lot of debate from many different states that had concerns with different things with the raising dues. But it was definitely good discussion, good talk between many of the states. And then also we started to talk about the individual committees that each of the Kansas delegates and the delegates from the rest of the United States were put on, and just going through those, making sure that those are exactly what we want to bring forward in front of everybody at National Convention. And we have a third session tonight to finish up with the rest of the committees that each of us have been working on. And Michael Dowd and Max Harmon are actually, out of the 6 committees on the national level, Kansas has 2 of the chairs. So we're really proud of them too, putting in a lot of hard work and making sure they're getting everything done for the committees that they're chairing. And they're going to bring forward their proposals today at that third delegate session.
Very good. As folks might know, Max and Michael are your fellow state officers. As far as recognition of individual and team FFA members, well, we're still waiting for the Proficiency Award winners to be announced. There are 4 Kansas FFA members up for those, and we'll find out when we talk again next week. But we do have one Kansas FFA chapter which attained a national honor. What was that about?
Yes, we are very proud that Chapman FFA was the national winner for strengthening agriculture in premier leadership. So that's awesome that we had some national chapter awards up there from Kansas, and we're really proud of Chapman FFA.
It takes quite an effort on the part of a chapter in a given area to attain that national award. So this is not a small accomplishment whatsoever, right?
Definitely. It takes a lot of hard work putting in the different activities that they do in their chapter and making sure that they fill out their application as best as possible. And obviously we were able to see that from Chapman.
Again, congratulations to the Chapman FFA, the national winner in strengthening agriculture and premier leadership. Big recognition there. And we do have a K-Stater who attained a major individual recognition, not necessarily a native Kansan, but we do want to mention that individual as well.
Yes, Eric Atkinson. He's a senior in agriculture education at Kansas State, and he won the American Star Farmer in Agri-Science. And he's originally from Paulina, Iowa. So we are very proud to see him on that stage, and we flashed him the Wildcat whenever we were down there on the floor. So that was very exciting to see him do so well with his Star Farmer Award.
So again, congratulations to K-State student Eric Atkinson for being the National Star Award winner in Agri-Science. What is ahead today on the agenda then?
We, the state officers and I, we are very excited. We're going to be attending the Blue Room at the National FFA Convention and Expo this afternoon. The Blue Room has a lot of innovative methods and technology that advances like food production and the challenges that it faces, and it's sponsored by Microsoft. And this convention that shows and displays a lot of different technology advances that are going to be implemented in this industry, and I'm excited to see everything about it and learn the different technologies and what's to come in agriculture and across the United States and in Kansas.
That ought to be quite an experience. In fact, just about anybody would like to take that in. Be eager to hear about what you see and find out there at that session when we talk again next Monday. And by the way, Miranda, we need to remind folks we do have a Kansas FFA member up for national office, and that will be decided tomorrow, correct?
Yes, we have Elizabeth Meyer from Marion, Kansas. She is still interviewing and going through the process. So we are very proud and excited for her and excited to see how it all plays out. And it'll be announced in the 9th session on Saturday. So we are very excited to see how that turns out for her.
And we wish Elizabeth Meyer from the Marion FFA chapter all the luck in the world in attaining that national office, the decision to come tomorrow. Miranda, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day at the convention, and we'll visit again Monday for a wrap-up. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Eric.
She's Miranda Depenbusch, Kansas FFA state reporter from the floor of the 91st National FFA Convention, continuing today in Indianapolis. And next, this week's Kansas Wheat Scoop. Here's Marcia Boswell.
U.S. trade policy has been going through a wild ride recently. The current U.S. administration believes that the existing trade architecture is outdated or constricting, and new forms of leverage are needed to achieve its goals. Meanwhile, they have correctly pointed out that some countries seem to interpret trade commitments as rules to ignore until caught, and then to be circumvented. This perspective has a ring of truth, but understates the major benefits of international trade institutions to the United States, and may have long-term costs. However, using the space such leverage creates has certainly produced results in trade talks, including an updated U.S.-Korea agreement, a completed North American Free Trade Agreement renegotiation, renewed efforts to address long-standing U.S. complaints at the World Trade Organization, and agreements to begin negotiations with Japan and the European Union. This situation has even allowed U.S. wheat associates to make progress on some long-standing issues, so we certainly appreciate the effort to use the tools available in ways that can help U.S. wheat farmers and their customers. U.S. wheat associates will continue to question certain approaches that we believe could disrupt the hard-won, mutually beneficial trade between the wheat farmers we represent and their overseas customers. But we will also strongly support the administration when its approach can help strengthen the international trading system and make trade freer. If that is the ultimate outcome, perhaps the ride will have been worth it. For Kansas Wheat, I'm Marcia Boswell.
Thanks, Marcia, and this is Agriculture Today. Legal and financial concerns surround the day-to-day management of the agricultural industry. Producers, ag creditors, and USDA agencies rely on Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. If you've received an adverse decision from the USDA or have an ag credit concern, call today 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services, exploring options, generating solutions. Agriculture Today is back now, as we'll get into Kansas agricultural weather once more. Mary Knapp joins us from the Weather Data Library here at K-State, climatologist with K-State Research and Extension. The exceptional fall weather we've seen in Kansas, at least the first part of this week, extending out of the weekend, allowed for some much-needed field work time, Mary.
Yes, it did. We had some mild temperatures, plenty of sunshine, a little bit of wind, particularly when you were looking at the weekend conditions. So that allowed for more field work. When we look at the USDA NASS report, they were up to 3.1 days suitable for field work for the week ending on the 21st, on Monday, which compared to the previous week, which was 1 day, looks a lot better. But it was not particularly warmer than normal for that time period. When we look at the temperatures, statewide we averaged still a degree cooler than normal. It may surprise people to know that the warmest part of the state was actually in the Northwest. They averaged 51.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which was just a shade under a degree warmer than normal for the period. In contrast, that warm air hadn't pushed its way down into southeastern Kansas. They averaged 52.6, technically a little warmer than the Northwest, but that was 4 degrees cooler than they would typically be for this time of the year. So again, that kind of divergence across there. Rainfall was a different story. Statewide, we averaged 0.03 of an inch, with the percentage being 6% of normal. The Southeast was the winner in the rainfall lottery, if you will. They had an average of 0.09 of an inch, which was 10% of normal. If you go on a percentage basis, it was the Southwest. They averaged 0.06 of an inch, which was 18% of normal. Again, not particularly wet, and that was welcome. We had plenty of moisture in the earlier parts of the month. Indeed, if we look at it, you have to go all the way back to the year-to-date totals to find anybody that's below normal. We look at the April to October and the September to October totals, and they're all well above normal. So, again, going into our dry season with pretty good moisture profile.
The drought monitor reflects that in that there was very little change this past week, you say.
Right. They did carve away the last of the abnormally dry conditions in the southeast. Not surprising given the fact that they did see some additional moisture there. There was no change in the lingering drought that extends across northeast and east central Kansas and a little bit into central Kansas. They're still abnormally dry across that region, and a few pockets of moderate drought, but those are very small. We've got 90% of the state that is officially drought-free. There's no flavor of drought at all on that. So again, given the very deep drought conditions that were affecting those regions, it's not surprising that it's going to take a little while for the moisture that we've received to move through the system, reflect itself in the hydrological profile, and clear up that remaining drought pattern.
Now, none of this accounts for the moisture that has occurred, Wednesday through overnight then?
Right. The rainfall that we saw starting Wednesday out in the western part of the state and lingering through Thursday and into early morning hours today will show up on next week's drought monitor. Amounts were variable. The heaviest rainfall amounts that have been reported so far have been right on that border between the western divisions and the central divisions. So Graham County, there was a report of over 1.5 inches of rainfall. In Ellis County, there were some reports of 0.9 to an inch of rain. So again, some spotty, fairly heavy amounts that have been reported. More generally, in the western divisions, we were seeing anywhere between 1/3 and 3/4 of an inch of rainfall. In the east, it's not been up to that 3/4, but there's been quite a bit in 1/2 to 1/3 of an inch of rain. Southeast Kansas, not so much yet, but again, numbers are still coming in, and the system hasn't moved out completely, so they may pick up some more early this morning.
But the matter at hand is that this will forestall harvest once again for a few days in a number of locations.
Right. It will certainly put the brakes on any kind of field work for at least a couple of days, depending upon how well drained the soils are and what we get for weekend weather. We are looking for temperatures to warm back up into the 60s, and there may be some wind, which would help with that surface drying to a degree. Unfortunately, when you look at the long term, the 8 to 14 day outlook, which carries us through the first week in November, they're calling for wetter than normal conditions. And while we don't normally see a lot, it's not the pattern that we need to speed harvest.
That, coupled with our typical fall weather, means that moisture, once it lands, will stick around for a while. The evapotranspiration factor is minimized considerably this time of year, isn't it?
Right. When you have normal temperatures, you are already facing a lower evaporation rate and a lower transpiration rate. You don't have as much vegetation using that moisture and moving that ET rate to the higher level. If you throw in cooler than normal temperatures, that slows it down even more. If you cut off the wind, which is another factor for increasing the evapotranspiration rates, that is another drag on the drying pattern. And throw in a little cloud cover, and you put a big wrench in the evaporation or the transpiration. Anyway, the drying rates.
So this may stretch out harvest delays. We'll see how it plays out. Mary, thank you as always. We'll catch up with you next Friday.
Thanks, Eric.
Mary Knapp, climatologist with K-State Research and Extension. Again, we'd urge you to take full advantage of that reservoir of information on Kansas weather factors available from the Weather Data Library here at K-State and the Mesonet system it maintains statewide. Simply go to mesonet.ksu.edu. That's mesonet.ksu.edu. That closes out this Friday edition. Thanks for tuning in, and do enjoy your weekend. Eric Atkinson here for Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.